Alrighty, thank you guys for coming today to another Sports Analytics Society basketball meeting. Today we are going to be checking in on the current standings of the NCAA tournament, as well as our personal club bracket challenge, as well as doing a little bit of a discussion on the NBA trade deadline. So what we're going to do is first we're going to talk about March Madness and then have a quick discussion about that, talk about our brackets, and then we'll jump into a talk about the trade deadline and then discussion about that as well. So I'm going to pass it to Nico and he's going to talk about March Madness.
What's up, guys? So it's been quite the crazy March so far. We've had our fair share of upsets. A few notable ones I listed here. Number 15 seed Oral Roberts took down Ohio State in the first round. I know a large percentage of people had Ohio State either in their championship, winning it all, or even in the Final Four. So that was a good way to start everyone's bracket being busted. Second one, Abilene Christian beat number 3 Texas. Head coach of Texas, Shaka Smart, is now 0-3 in the tournament when coaching Texas. Number 13, North Texas beat Purdue. This one was especially shocking because it was essentially a home game for Purdue. Then in the round of 32, number 8, Loyola Chicago beat number 1, Illinois. A lot of people were saying Loyola Chicago are ranked much lower than they should have been, but still to take down number 1 Illinois, who many people thought was the best team in the tournament, was a big shock that early. The 12 seed Oregon State beat number 4 Oklahoma State, led by Cade Cunningham. Oregon State was one of the 4 12 seeds, and a lot of people were looking to pick a 12 seed to beat a 5, but I think Oregon State was the least selected 12 seed of those. So for them to win and then also make a second round upset and a little bit of a run themselves was surprising. And then this was before UCLA took down Michigan yesterday, but before that in the Sweet 16, they also beat number 2 Alabama, who had one of the highest scoring offenses in the country. So for a playing team to beat a 2 seed as well as a 1 seed now, make it to the Final Four, they have some momentum on their side going into this matchup with Gonzaga. So here's some storylines. Going into the Elite Eight, that's when I made it. We were 1 upset shy of breaking the record for most upsets in a single March Madness. But I think yesterday with UCLA's defeat of Michigan, that will now break the record. So this year we have the most upsets. Gonzaga is still on their way to a perfect season. And they've really been taking down teams, not including their matchup yesterday. Their average win margin is 25.66 points. So they're seeking to have the first undefeated season since the 76 Indiana Hoosiers. Of the 6 biggest upsets, 4 of the lower ranked teams had a higher free throw percentage than their opponent. And that does not include UCLA, who shot just 0.09% worse than Alabama. And Oral Roberts, who made the run themselves, had the highest free throw percentage in the nation. That's one thing to look for in the coming years with your brackets. And then defense really does win championships because of the 8 Elite Eight teams this year, 6 were ranked in the top 10 of Ken Pom adjusted defensive efficiency rankings, and 5 of those teams were in the top 10. 6 are in the top 20, 5 are in the top 10. So, and then as you can see, a definition of defensive efficiency. So those 2 are big stats to look for in a March Madness team, especially with these upsets and matchups that other teams really haven't seen before. So now I was just going to open it up to you guys. Anything that you saw, any upsets that you predicted that you're proud of? What do you think is going to happen in these Final Four matchups now?
Nico, should we take a look at the standings for March Madness? Our bracket?
Look now.
Okay, cool. All right, where is this at? Is anyone who's here right now, is anyone's bracket doing really well? Obviously, mine is completely busted.
Looks like in this group, mine is busted. I had Illinois winning, but I don't know if you guys also entered the Barstool Fordham one. I'm in 3rd, top 3 in that one right now with my other bracket.
Good for you, dude.
Doing okay there, but
I know for this bracket, I don't know where I am like rank wise, but I'm pretty sure with the like overall points available, I think I'm in last because I picked a lot of upsets to see if I could get something going, and that did not happen.
Oh yeah, you're 40th. You're
Yeah,
above 3 people though, so don't even worry. You could be last.
I tried to be different. Cade failed me.
Yeah, I had Oklahoma State going to the finals, man. Once they lost, I was like, oh brother.
Yeah, I'm in fourth place on this one, not to toot my own horn. But you were talking about the Ken Palm defense rankings, and you're saying how 6 of the top 8 teams in the Elite 8 were in the top 10 of those rankings, if I remember correctly. So that was kind of my strategy when I went in. I just picked the teams with the best defenses, and for the most part, and so it kind of worked out in my favor. I don't really know much about college basketball, but I know sometimes it's good to pick great defenses, and that's worked out so well so far.
Worked out for everybody except the teams that had to play Gonzaga. Like USC was one of the top defenses, and they got ran out of the gym still.
Does anybody know who Hugo is?
I think I do. I think I know who he is, but I'm not sure. I got to text him or talk to him and ask.
I know Anthony. He's down my floor. I don't know Hugo though.
I know a Hugo. I don't know if it's the Hugo I'm thinking of.
Yeah, that's the same thing with me. I'm not sure.
All right, interesting. Oh man, but yeah, this has been good. I was really like hyped up because I don't know if you guys remember I was talking about last meeting how I don't know anything about college, and like after the first day, like after the round of 64, the first day I was in first, and I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna win this thing. This is gonna be insane, and then now we're here. But hey, it is what it is.
Yeah, I'm in 18th right now, but I think ahead of me, no one has Houston winning the whole thing. So maybe if Houston is able to pull it out, I'll be able to win.
But is this you, Nico?
Yeah, that's me.
I see. Oh yeah, your max is still pretty high up there. Like
the champion gets, I think, 320 points. So I think if Houston wins, you might be able to pull it out.
I might still be a little too far behind, but I don't know.
You're one of 2 people who has them winning, so that would be good for you.
A nice jump.
I think some people have like 3 of the top 4 in the final 4. So even though I'm like 4th, I don't think it's even possible for me to win because I only have 2 teams. I think somebody lost. I forget who it was.
Checking out your bracket.
Kind of messed
Let's see what you got.
Yeah.
You had okay. So you would really essentially need Gonzaga and Houston in the finals to have a shot.
To even be in the top 3.
Yeah. But you're right there. You know what's crazy? I was looking at this the other day. Like there are people who at this point have 100% like that predicted UCLA to get there. I mean, there's only 2 it looks like, but like how do you do that?
Got to be a UCLA fan.
No, absolutely.
I think there's one on the like total leaderboards that has UCLA like winning the title, but if you see the name, it's like Michigan State fan. So they had Michigan State going all the way, but like ironically, they still allow UCLA to go. So it was pretty funny because like the title of it is like MSU fan, and it has UCLA winning it all.
Our group is ranked 42,000. So pretty good group, I guess we got.
Seems like it. I mean, I don't know how many groups there are, but that seems pretty high, like compared to the millions of brackets that exist. Good stuff, guys. All right. Anyone else? Any more comments on March Madness before we get started? Move on to the NBA.
I mean, just in general, I'm more of a college basketball guy than NBA, but I would definitely agree with the fact that the committee messed up the Loyola Chicago, Illinois region. Like Loyola Chicago, Illinois, that game should have been Sweet 16 minimum. I was so mad that Illinois had to play them second round because they were good too.
Yeah, Sweet 16 at least. Like I think Loyola Chicago statistically is the top 10 team in the country.
Yeah, Ken Palm, they were top 10.
Yeah, so it's ridiculous. Bad matchup. And it gave Houston a nice easy road too to get to the Final Four. All right, Tom, you want to move on?
Yeah,
to
sure.
Stuff?
Just a poll. I know there are like 3 or 4 you guys right in here with us. Like, do you guys prefer college or NBA more? I know Adam, you had just said that you prefer college. What about the rest of you guys?
NBA for sure.
For NBA.
All right, perfect. Moving forward then with the presentation. Okay, so as you guys probably know, the NBA trade deadline just passed a couple days ago, and it was incredibly active. If I'm not mistaken, it was the most active NBA trade deadline maybe ever. There were 16 trades between a total of 23 teams, and a grand total of 46 players were moved from one team to another. And of course, I put pictures of both Woj and Shams because, you know, the heated battle between two news-breaking giants we got there. And so let's take a look at some of the biggest moves of the deadline. So I split it up between contenders, which is basically teams that realistically could have a shot at winning the championship. Buyers, which is teams who either are just a little close to being a true contender or trying to get better so that they can become like a solid playoff team. And then rebuilders, which are just teams who currently don't really have enough to win right now, and they're more looking towards the future. So for contenders, we saw the Miami Heat add Victor Oladipo via trade with the Houston Rockets. So hopefully they're going to look to make another run to the finals like they did last year. The Denver Nuggets added Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee to help boost their front court up a little bit. The 76ers traded for point guard George Hill, who was on the Oklahoma City Thunder. That'll be really good. I'm assuming he'll play for their second unit a little bit and help boost their bench up. The Clippers and the Hawks swapped Lou Williams for Rajon Rondo. And the Bucks, even though this was not a trade deadline deal, the Bucks traded with the Houston Rockets for PJ Tucker to help round out their defense. As far as buyers go, probably the biggest move of the deadline was the Chicago Bulls making a huge trade for Nikola Vucevic of the Orlando Magic, pairing him one All-Star with another in Zach LaVine, hoping to compete a little bit in the East. The Celtics made a good trade, giving up 2 second-rounders for Evan Fournier, who is quietly having a really good season and hopefully is going to help them contend a little bit. The Raptors and the Blazers swapped Norman Powell and Gary Trent Jr., and the Mavericks traded for JJ Redick. And then as far as rebuilders, the Magic traded away most of their veterans, and the Rockets also did the same thing. They're both looking to rebuild. And so why are trades important? So if you were to take a look in the last 7 years of the 14 teams who have made the NBA Finals, at least one of the 2 teams in each finals has made a trade mid-season or at the deadline. So may or may not be a coincidence that most of the teams who made trades were LeBron James-led teams, because those rosters tend to get retooled a lot. But regardless, you have to consider the fact that trades are important because they give you the opportunity to improve your team mid-season. And then along with the trade deadline, I figured it was important to include buyout additions, because with the trade deadline comes buyouts. When the deadline passes, players who were hoping to get moved via trade or organizations that were hoping to move a player, they're no longer able to do that. So oftentimes buyouts happen when a team and a player have a mutual interest in parting ways. Usually happens when the timeline for a player, usually a veteran, and a team that's usually hoping to rebuild don't align. And this year, especially, a number of high-profile players, or at least high-profile names, have been bought out. And then they were subsequently picked up by contenders, sort of making the rich of the NBA even richer. So down below, we got pictures of Blake Griffin and LaMarcus Aldridge, who both went to Brooklyn, who was already a favorite to win the title. And then we saw Andre Drummond go to the Los Angeles Lakers. And then we also saw Jeff Teague go to the Milwaukee Bucks, and Austin Rivers got bought out. There were reports he was going to go to the Bucks, but we haven't seen that just yet. So that one is pending. So I wanted to open up the floor to all of you guys for a discussion of which teams you think got better, which teams you think got worse, and then maybe talk a little bit about the buyout system. And, you saw the three biggest names go to the Lakers and the Nets, which are already arguably the two biggest favorites to win. So do you guys think that the buyout system is flawed? Do you think that it's just the way it is and players are going to go to big markets? Let's have a discussion about that. So, yeah.
I like the Bulls move a lot as a Bulls fan. Really interesting because outside of like the top teams in the East, I don't think there's another team that has as much top level talent with two all-stars as they do. But interesting to see how that works out because they've been rebuilding for years and haven't actually done anything to actively improve until now. But just because you have two stars doesn't mean you're going to be good. Like, look at the Wizards this year. So find out how good they are, I guess.
You said you're a Bulls fan?
Yeah.
What do you think about them moving Larry Markkinen to the bench for Thad Young?
Why wouldn't they do that? Markkinen's an offense-only player. Thad Young, good all-rounder, definitely can defend. Too much overlap with Markkinen and Vucevic starting at the same time. I don't know, some good bench points from Lauri Markkinen. He's definitely not going to be as good as I thought he was when he came into the league, though, sadly.
Yeah, fair argument. Because I know I had seen a quote of him saying that, like, oh, I know I'm a starter in this league, but I'm going to do what coach wants. But, like, it's interesting because, when you did see him first come into the league, he was averaging, I want to say, close to 16 his rookie year. So I know a lot of people were thinking he was going to be a star, but maybe it's not going to turn out that way, like you said. How about the Miami Heat? You guys think adding Victor Oladipo is enough to get them to contend with the big guys in the Eastern Conference, like the Bucks, the 76ers, and the Nets?
I don't know necessarily for the Heat if it's just the fact that they got Oladipo, but if I remember, they did get Ariza as well. So that was kind of helpful. I think really getting depth was really good for them, not just specifically Oladipo, because Jimmy and Bam will already give them enough of a boost to be like, oh, we're kind of a contender in the East because we have two guys who've shown that they can play. But I do think between Oladipo and Ariza, getting two pieces that are well known around the league and that can give you depth is always good to have, especially when you consider the East, kind of thinking of what Chicago did as well, where they looked at it being like, hey, although we could be like, I think they were the 10th seed going into it, but between the 10th and 4th seed in the East, there's only like a 2-game gap between every team. So between the Heat and the Bulls, they both looked at it being like, we can make a push right here. And if we can just get the timing right where we go hot into the playoffs, then they could easily snag like a 4 or 5 seed. And then if you play 4 or 5, you don't have to play against the big 3. And so you can get past and get to the second round. So that was kind of like between Oladipo going and then the Bulls getting Vooch is nice, but also getting Tice was big because now they have a starting caliber player who they can just get off the bench, which knowing their division and the teams that they're going to play, like he can just dominate guys off the bench. Because when he was starting, it wasn't as good, but a guy who's a starting caliber coming off the bench. I mean, I'm a Hornets fan, so whenever they have times that Zeller plays bench minutes, he's always playing against guys who like aren't as known. So when he's coming off the bench getting 20 minutes a night, he's getting like 13 rebounds. So that's always helpful. So I think Tice was also really big for the Bulls. But yeah, I think depth in general was what really helped those teams more than just one player itself.
You said Tice. What do you guys think about the Celtics moves for Fournier, Luke Cornett, I think it was, and Mo Wagner? Does that help get them over the hump, put them back into a better spot for the playoffs?
I think Fournier is a really good pickup because they gave up like second round picks for him. He drops 20 a night. Like surprised more teams didn't go after him, honestly. Although I don't know if they have what it takes to compete this year, even with him.
Yeah, I also agree. I actually didn't even know they got Luke Cornett. That's pretty solid. I think he's a decent player. I'm not positive, but I agree with Anthony in that like that's a really low asking price, 2 second rounders for a guy who's putting up like 19, 20 on really good shooting efficiency. So like good for the Celtics that they got him. I know he's an expiring contract, so we'll see if they can actually re-sign him. But it does feel like a move that it'll maybe get them a little better, but it's not going to really change the ultimate outcome of their season. Like I don't think they're suddenly contenders now, but hey, I'd love to see him prove me wrong. But I think it's a good move, but it's not enough. And that's also the thing with it seemed in the past few years with Danny Ainge and the Celtics, like they're always right on the edge of, oh, we almost traded for this star player, that star player. Oh, they were in talks, and they never really pulled the trigger on anyone big. And you know they had all those picks to make a big trade like that, and they never really did. So it's interesting to see their future because they got Brown, they got Tatum, but beyond that, the rest of those guys are uncertain whether they're a part of the long-term future. Let's talk about Brooklyn and LA getting Andre Drummond and Brooklyn getting LaMarcus Aldridge. They got Blake Griffin a couple weeks ago. What do you think? Are those two the clear-cut favorites to win, or do you think just because they added those guys, it doesn't necessarily mean they're making it to the finals?
I think Drummond helps a lot with Anthony Davis being hurt. It's good to have a big, someone who can rebound as well as Drummond can. As for the Nets signings, LaMarcus Aldridge I still think is a relatively valuable piece. But I don't know that Blake Griffin is the all-star, or not, I don't know. He hasn't shown to be the all-star player that he once was. But it does help with depth, and that's very important in the playoffs, as we were saying.
I actually really liked the Andre Drummond signing for the Lakers. I think one of the things that made them so tough to beat last year was that they could go like really big with they had JaVale McGee, they had Dwight Howard, who was really productive off the bench, and they ran a defense where they funneled players into the paint, and then they had those great shot blockers there, and that athleticism and that like paint protection is something they've sort of been missing this year. I mean, Marcus Gasol, Montrezl Harrell aren't the rim protectors that Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee are. So I think adding Andre Drummond, if he buys into the system, if he just is a rim protector, if he's a hustle guy, grabs rebounds, does all the dirty work, I think he can be phenomenal for them. And he adds a whole new dimension to their defense and maybe even a little something to their offense that they didn't have before. So I think they're even more dangerous than people are thinking right now with the addition of Andre Drummond. And then for Brooklyn, I actually like Griffin for them. I think that he's still ramping up and that he's going to be really good just because of his basketball IQ, and he's a veteran. Aldridge, I didn't really love. Like, I kind of thought it was redundant, and that like he's basically just like him and Blake Griffin are like the same. they're not the same player, but like they're the same caliber of player, and they're both sort of power forwards.
Seemed like we got him, so you can't kind of move.
Do you guys think that with the buyout, seeing how the three big names went to LA and Brooklyn, like, is that bad for the league that players that get bought out are just going to go to the best teams and make it even more lopsided?
I'm not a huge basketball fan, just sports fan in general, but just thinking about the idea of the buyout, I'm just learning about it today, honestly, for the first time. I really don't like it. I don't know. I don't know if it's commonly done for that reason, but the fact that a player just pick up and go doesn't sit well with me. I don't know. It's not based on anything crazy, but just based on what you guys are saying. I don't know if anybody's got a more informed opinion. Probably do, but
I'd say for buyouts, the one aspect that I do find negative is like smaller market teams really do not get the benefit at all in a buyout. Like Milwaukee, even though they're a contender, even though they'd be a team that would really look for an Aldridge or a Drummond because it'd be really nice to get some rebounds and it would be nice to like it would allow them to get better. They're a small market team, so they're not really going to have the opportunity to get a guy like Drummond or Aldridge to go play for them. But I would say in somewhat of a benefit, I think it's good to know that at least players have somewhat power over the like it's kind of power over the team itself because I'd much rather a player be able to show that they can go somewhere than an owner be like stuck up, be like, well, I know you want to go play for this team, but I don't want to get rid of you, so I'm just going to keep you around. Like that's kind of what happened with Anthony Davis asking for a trade, and like everybody knew he was going to go to LA at some point, but the Pelicans were like, we want to keep you for a while, and so he just kind of sat out. I'd rather have a player like Drummond or Aldridge go to a team that's going to go compete than I would see a player like Drummond or Aldridge just be like, I don't want to play here anymore. I'm going to sit out because, like, just from basketball itself, I'd rather just them play than they don't.
yeah, I could definitely see that just from like a fan perspective. Definitely better in that sense, but yeah, I get your point.
Yes, competition is like buyouts are really what makes the definition of a super team, where it's like they all choose to go to a team because when you think of the trade deadline, all the moves that were made, if someone thinks like, oh, this team's a super team, like, no, that was all strategic. Like you had to give up something to get that guy. So when you're trading, or like when the Warriors drafted Draymond Green, Steph, Clay, and they get all these guys to play for them, that like that's not really a super team. That's like building a team. But when you get a guy like Kevin Durant to sign, that's what makes it a super team. So buyouts are I would say buyouts are more of a reason that super teams are made, and that's the reason that people don't like them. But yeah, there's both ways to look at it, but overall, I do agree that like buyouts are not the best thing for the league, but there's always a reason for it.
You don't think the Brooklyn Nets are ruining the league?
I mean, they're really creating a formula that's ruining the league, but it's not something that, when it comes to the trading for Harden, like they had to get rid of a lot to get Harden. But when you think of like buying out Aldridge, basically buying out Blake Griffin, and then signing Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, those are things where you're like, okay, they clearly plan to go play in Brooklyn. But James Harden, the move James Harden itself, like both teams had to agree to that, and then the Nets had to get rid of somebody to get him. So that move alone, I really like, but everything else, you're just like, okay, they want to go play in New York and they want to go win a title. So yeah, building super teams isn't the best, and trust me, like as a small market fan, I don't really like to see that, but it's how the league is.
Fair. I agree with you in that, you know, it's what an organization is supposed to do. Like if they can get better, they should get better. If they can add these guys, they should add these guys. They're not gonna, LaMarcus Aldridge isn't gonna call them up on the phone and say, "Hey, I want to sign with you guys." And then they're gonna say, "Nah, we're good enough already. Like we don't need you." But it is a really interesting argument that like it gets to the point where you're like, all right, is that if everyone's just gonna sign with Brooklyn because they want to win, like it does sort of ruin the product just a little bit.
I feel like the buyout market isn't really the issue with creating super teams. Like the Nets, I'd say the Nets and the KD Warriors are the only real super teams in that they have like a really disproportionate amount of top tier talent, as opposed to maybe like the big three Heat, where you have LeBron and Wade and a third all-star, but that third all-star isn't as good as Kyrie Irving is right now. And I don't know, like ring chasing vets has always really been a thing. As long as you're a championship caliber team, I think you're going to attract players like that. And I don't think there's any other team outside of the Lakers and the Nets that is even close to their level of like viable contending, being a favorite. So, and when you look at the Nets and those Warriors, like the Warriors only got KD because there was like a $20-30 million spike in the salary cap, and the Nets just played around in free agency and made a trade for Harden. So, if you want to stop super teams, it's got to be through that, not through the buyout market. And none of the players who are on the buyout market are even like remotely as good as Kyrie or KD or anyone on those two teams that I just mentioned, any of the stars.
Yeah, that was the point I was about to make. Like, you're never going to get on like that all-star quality of a player on the buyout market that'll make that big of a difference as much as a trade or a signing would. Like, sure, Drummond's going to make an impact. Aldridge and Griffin will probably have an impact. But like the Nets and Lakers were in a position already to be contenders. I don't think it bumps them up, but it's not like they're bumping them ahead of anyone else.
I honestly think that Andre Drummond is the best player we've seen get bought out in like, I can't even remember how long. And I know a lot of people say like, oh, he's an empty stats guy. He grabs these rebounds, he scores some points, but like he makes no impact on the game. But I think on a team that's already a contender and already is good enough to make the playoffs and be in a position to contend, like I think his impact is people are going to realize like, okay, yeah, he can do a lot. I mean, I don't know what you guys think if he's a player that's worth having on a contender, but I think there's going to be a change. Like when you're on a contender, when you're on a team that's winning and you're just helping them out, making winning plays, his role is going to be reduced. That he doesn't have to score all the points. All he's going to have to do is rebound and hustle and play defense. And I think with LeBron and AD like on his back, I think he's going to do that. And I think he's going to be really, really good for them.
Casual NBA fans love to undervalue rebounding. And Andre Drummond is the best rebounder of the past 10 years, I would say, without a doubt. Like he's consistently leading the league in rebounding. And on a team like the Lakers, who, I mean, they're a good shooting team, but they're not one of the league's best. Like having him down there, especially when Anthony Davis gets healthy, is going to be huge for them.
All righty. Well, any final thoughts, final questions? Any other talking points you guys want to talk about? All right, sweet. Thank you guys for coming. Very good discussion on both college and NBA, and we're looking forward to seeing you next time.
All right, see ya.
Thank you. Have a good day.